Hi everyone, welcome to this interview by COREcruitment. Thank you very much for joining us today. COREcruitment, if you're not aware, is an international recruitment company. We deal with mid to senior level positions across multiple different sectors that we operate in, all related to hospitality and guest service. Now, we're running this interview series to inject some positivity into the market, and we're speaking to lots of different interesting people who are opening new concepts, doing interesting projects, have set up new businesses, just interesting things to kind of give people some inspiration for their day. I'll say inspiration a few more times in this interview as well. If you can recommend anybody who you think would be a good person to take part, then please do get in touch with me on krishnan@corerecruitment.com. And if you want to see any of the other content that we've produced, it's on our website, www.corerecruitment.com, or you can listen to it on Spotify, or you can watch it on YouTube as well. Now, the luxury side of the hotel market has been expanding really rapidly, especially in the past kind of couple of years. It feels like it's been elevated somewhat. And a company which is doing exceptional things in that area is Highgate, who have got over 15 billion pounds of assets, or dollars of assets, under management across 400 properties, I think it is, across North America, Europe, the Caribbean, and Latin America. And we're really lucky today to be joined by Xavier, who's leading one of those properties, which is a massive development in Miami. Hi, Xavier. How are you?
Hi, Krishnan. Good to see you, my friend.
You too. So just to get us kicked off, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself, the project, and the mission of what you're putting together in Miami? That would be great.
Sure. So it's a very interesting project. It's something completely new that's coming to Miami that no one's done before. And it's really piggybacking on the success of the Ultra Club 11 in Miami, which you might have heard of. It's the number one club in the US. It's number four club in the world, number one grossing by square foot. And it's been in existence for 12 years. So a very long success for a nightlife
Mm,
operation. And really what's differentiated 11 from the other clubs and the nightlife environment is the fact that they really approach it with a hospitality mindset. I worked for SBE for a while in my career, and that was SLS, the hotel side, and there was also a nightclub part of it. And when I first started in that company, I was immediately told, you need to understand the nightlife part of it. So I did a little bit of, I spent some time with the nightlife operators, and I quickly learned that usually in the hotel business, we're in the business of yes. We're always here to accommodate any request and anything to make our guests feel better. In the nightlife space, it's kind of the business of no. The more you push back, the more you say no, the more you tend to generate interest for your venue. So it's very antagonistic when you think of it. And 11 has put a twist on it and really treated everyone with a mindset of hospitality, with a welcoming. For example, we say welcome home when you come to the venue. And so those things over time, have gained notoriety and really contributed to making the brand what it is today. So it's the natural evolution of this on a larger scale now is to develop that hospitality into a hotel and residences product. So we're opening a tower later this year in 26. We will open the 11 club hotel and residences, which will be condo units with a hotel program attached to it, along with amazing entertainment and great venues. So there will be 10 food and beverage venues in there, and perhaps, what will steal the show is our day club or the pool deck, which will become, sort of like a Vegas pool party in Miami with unbelievable energy and, world-renowned DJs. And I think this is going to infuse a bit of energy in the market that is needed and that we haven't seen in Miami yet.
that's incredible. I mean, I think a Miami pool party sounds just as good as a Vegas pool party, but I mean, I wouldn't know the difference myself personally. But I love the simplicity of something like Welcome Home. It's a really nice touch. Are there any other little things like that that you do kind of across the business, which are cost effective and easy to implement?
Yeah, I think with what we're trying to do is really, play on what hospitality should be, which is an experience, right? And I'm sure we'll touch on some of the trends in the industry, but what we're trying to do is always surprise and delight. So what we have in store, for example, are random activations that you will see throughout the property that are not scheduled, and you cannot chase them, but they will appear in front of you. And it could be a mobile DJ, it could be someone playing an instrument, it could be, someone in a costume jumping in the pool, but it's always something that piques your interest. It's possibly a photo moment at the same time, but it's
Nice.
something that will stay in your memory and that will create an experience that is unforgettable.
Love that. So, what initially inspired you to work in hospitality and to pursue this as an active career?
So that's a funny story actually that I've told a few times, but I'm a little bit ADD as a person. I couldn't be at a desk and just at a computer all day doing the same thing day in, day out. I would go absolutely nuts. I need to be on my feet. I need to interact with people. I need to work with a team. I need a lot of stimulation. So, growing up, I was looking for a career, something to do. My dad's a doctor. So obviously growing up, my dad, being my hero, I wanted to be a doctor. So I went to my dad one day and I said, listen, I think I want to be a doctor. Can you give me some advice? What should I do? And the first thing he said is, don't be a doctor. This is ridiculous. You're never going to have any time to see your family. This is a 24/7 business. Pick something that's a little bit more quiet so you can have an actual life. And so I followed and not didn't follow the advice because I probably picked the only career that's also 24 hours and possibly even more taxing than anything else. But at the end of the day, it was the right choice. It really fits my personality. I love taking care of people, and I've never lost that passion, and it still gets me going today.
That's such a good story. Is he happy with your chosen career choice?
He is, yes, very much so, very much so. He's happy to see this, and he's living vicariously through me a little bit as well. Growing up in France, in the 50s and 60s was a little bit of a different environment. He's always also been fascinated by travel, and he might have not had the opportunity to do it with his career, but seeing me go from country to country and discover all these places is something that he enjoys, and he comes to visit, of course.
Oh, I love that. That's amazing. So, in terms of what motivates you and what you find most fulfilling, other than the global travel, about being kind of like, business leader, what would you say kind of gets you out of bed in the morning?
What I particularly enjoy is the development of a strategy. I tend to have a very strategic mind. I compartmentalize things, and I like to really create the roadmap. So it's to do that is essentially translating all the information that's around you into something you can understand, and something you can turn into actionable items and actionable strategies. All the information that you need, all the clues are around it. It's like any given Sunday when Al Pacino gives that speech in the locker in the end, and he says, "The inches you need are all around you, just in front of your face." It's kind of the same thing in any case, right? And in any business. So it takes a lot of analysis. It takes gathering data, gathering opinions, really making sure that you look at everything. My wife always says, "In God we trust, and for everything else, bring me data." So, it's a good point to start, and then you sprinkle a little bit of experience through that. But I would say mostly, it's common sense, right? If you have a common sense approach to all this information that you gather, then it's fairly easy to craft a roadmap that then makes sense. And then the second part of this is leading the team down the road, and walking that mile along with the team, and that makes a huge difference. And I think when you lead with common sense, it gets engagement.
Absolutely. The last couple of years, things have kind of evolved kind of like, quite dramatically. How would you say your style has kind of adapted over that period of kind of rapid change?
You really can never get stuck in your ways, right? I think as the saying goes, the only constant is change. And we've seen this, over the last few years. COVID was a huge example of this, where we all had to pivot very quickly and learn a new way to do business. But in a way, I think, adaptability is really a leader's number one skill. It should really be your top skill in your bag. And I think, having done this in my particular experience, I've been lucky enough to do this job in 8 countries, multiple properties, multiple environment, communities, cultures. And the one thing that always resonates and always works is to adapt. You have to adapt to the environment, adapt to the conditions of the business that you're actually taking care of, but also adapt to your audience. So I think it's kind of the same as strategy, right? Grab all the information around you, put it together, and then really find a way that resonates with your audience. I think that makes a huge difference.
Absolutely. Now, looking at kind of the macroeconomic climate in terms of cost pressures, labor market, very demanding kind of like, customer expectations, the rise and decline of kind of like sustainability. What does success look like in the sector coming over? I mean, other than profitability for the next kind of like couple of years, and how are you garnering that?
Speaking for the luxury segment, right, which I've mostly evolved in, I think it's the core of it remains the same, right? It's personalization. We've done this for a long time in luxury, personalize the experience. But I think now it's more about creating true experiences, emotional experiences that will stay with the guest. I think the age of grand lobbies and branding ad nauseum, where you have a logo on every single piece of your operating supply, it is not as relevant anymore. Some properties, try to now dab a little bit more into technology and bring AI into the picture, and replace some of that with AI. I think there's a certain degree of experience enhancement that you can get, through new technologies, through AI, through these, emerging platforms. But at the end of the day, we're not a very innovative industry, and I think it's for a reason. It's because our core business is to take care of people. And, it's just about, what is your story? What is the story of what we're trying to create? And we just have to stay consistent to it and focus a little bit more on the emotional value, rather than the physical infrastructure.
Yeah, really good answer. Really good answer. In terms of skill or mindsets, which do you think is most important to the next generation of hospitality leaders?
Next or past, I think, this is a constant there again, right? I think empathy is obviously at the core of our business. I would say one mindset that's always been successful for me in all these different environments, and that tends to resonate well, is authenticity. We're in a world of corporate politics. They're not always easy to navigate. We're all, hyper competitive developers, and it's all about numbers, and it's all about what's on paper. But we need to have, a common thread, that sort of puts all of this together. Our core business is hospitality beyond anything else, right? So it's to care for others, it's to genuinely care for others, to be authentic. I think everybody can see through fakeness, right? If you're acting, I think it'll get noticed. So it's just a matter of truly having the passion for what we do, really caring for the people that not only that we host, but also the team that we work with. And in my mind, this hasn't changed and shouldn't change, because it is a common thread to success through time.
Excellent. Now, I could see from kind of like a little bit of research that you're a private pilot, a scuba diver, a cook, you're an F1 fan, you're obviously a hotelier. In terms of like, all of these different facets, I mean, I really want to ask about the pilot side of things in terms of like how that came around. But, when you are looking at kind of like your team's commercial performance, well-being, all of that side of things, how do you think having kind of like a multi-discipline kind of background really helps you to kind of like lead and manage others and make sure that they're doing well, both physically and emotionally at work?
It's very important to do both, and you will see the obviously when I talk about passion and emotion and scuba diving, aviation, F1, all big emotions, right? Big things that give you a lot of adrenaline. So I am a bit like that, and that's what our guests also and our employees also seek when they either join an organization or come to your property. I think there's a big factor in fulfillment that usually beats even a paycheck, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're looking at your list of things to do in terms of all of those plates that you've constantly got spinning, how do you prioritize your tasks and how do you think about what you're going to get done first and what do you leave to the side?
So it's always a struggle, right? But I think when you have a list, you just have to focus on the most important, not only just time constraints, but also the effect of decisions on the business. When it comes to managing priorities with a team in a leadership capacity, I've always believed that you have to narrow it down to something that's manageable. At the end of the day, if you give someone a list of 20 priorities, there's really no chance of accomplishing 20 priorities, right? So the only thing you're doing is essentially giving that person the choice of extracting their three priorities, which might not be yours, right? So at the end of, or the businesses. So at the end of the day, I think, there's merit in downsizing and really generating bite-size priorities that can be tackled and that can be fulfilled, right? And if you actually do this, it'll also be more rewarding for your team because they will feel the results. They will get through a task and they will get it to completion, as opposed to trying to get 20 tasks through completion and you don't really get a single one through the finish line.
Yeah, 100%. And in terms of the strategies that you're using when you're developing that future pipeline of talent, which is going to be like, working within the business, how you're identifying and nurturing that future talent.
Very important. I think, it starts with a core team, a core leadership team. And you need, again, passion is something that I always look for. And I think when you get to a point where everybody is truly in sync and the morale is good and people feel valued, and sense that. And by the way, one of the things that I've done mostly to create that fulfillment and that sense of value is to truly just treat your team like you would treat your guests, right? With respect, with empathy, and really, it's giving people a voice at the table. We've all worked in environments where, we're here to do a job, and then that's all that's required or asked. And then beyond that, please do not think, right? I like when people think. I like when people bring ideas, right? So giving your team a voice at the table is usually extremely fulfilling. And when you do that, people organically stay and that your retention becomes organic. It becomes a self-sufficient organic where word of mouth, reputation works in your favor. Good people, if they're happy, will bring good people.
100%. And in terms of kind of like, the last question from my side of things is like you've had a brilliant career to date, which is by no means anywhere close to over, but you've worked across Monaco, the Bahamas, the French Riviera, Nashville, Miami, like multiple very cool places. Um, what do you think, like, the pinnacle is? I mean, obviously opening the other additional two towers, right? But like, in terms of like long-term aspiration, is there any place you want to be or anything that you'd really love to do?
Yes, of course. Never satisfied, never achieved everything I can or I want. Um, I just want to continue to work in that space. I want to continue to make a difference, and, grow teams, grow businesses. But really, where I get the most joy is to work with people, to work with a team. I think a big measure of success is when I go back to a property that I used to manage, the kind of welcome I get from the team. And to me, I've made friends in all of these countries and all these destinations, and it fills my heart when I go back and these relationships are still meaningful, right? So I'm very proud of the journey. I think I was lucky enough to experience the world in somewhat of an unconventional way, and at least, for us hospitality folks, it's something that we're used to, but it's not really your typical progression. I've been very humbled by the people that I've met along the way, and the places and the cultures I experienced. But I'm still hungry for more. So I'll sleep when I'm dead.
I love that. Well, listen, Xavier, thank you so much for kind of coming on, having a chat, and telling us a little bit more about the business, the massive project that you're involved with, kind of currently, and like what your aspirations for the future are. I hope it all works out. I'll definitely look you up next time I'm in Miami, and thanks so much for taking the time again.
Always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.